Hey, what's up everybody? Bill DeFreitas for the GCBC. Today I'm joined with Paul Federici. He's a black belt under PJ O'Sullivan at Pura in Hamilton. He's a Nogi brown belt world silver medalist. Check out his YouTube channel, PFed Bjj. Drops a new technique every Monday. Paul, thank you very much for joining me here.
Great, man. It's great to be here. Like I said, it's great to chat with another person instead of my dog like I've been doing for the last 3 months. So great to meet you, man, and great to chat.
Cool. Well, I just wanted to get to know you a little bit better off the bat here. So 14 years in Jiu Jitsu. Mind just telling me where you started?
I started in Niagara actually in about 2006, I'd say. So I started at a small gym there, and it was kind of like a little more MMA oriented. And so I started in Niagara, and I trained there for a bunch of years. But I felt like I needed to kind of branch out because I was starting to train a bit at other clubs, and I was kind of realizing like I wasn't kind of progressing kind of as the way that I wanted. So I started to branch out probably around 2009, 2008. And I knew Ricardo Amendolia well. And I saw him at Fight Planet, and they said, look, we're starting a gym in Hamilton called Pura. So from about 2009, I started making the drive out there, like 45 minutes, almost an hour with traffic both ways. So I kind of found a home there with PJ, and I got kind of bumped up to purple belt kind of fast in my training, and I remember kind of venturing out, and I was like, I didn't really feel like I was at the time, I was like, I gotta up my game a little bit, so it was great to find PJ and those guys, and so I made a home there, and that's where I met Rory McDonald, because Rory was doing Nogi there, and I really had a really good connection with Rory from the start, and so he ultimately left after a couple of years to start Parabellum, and then about 3 years ago I started going out to Parabellum quite regularly. So I kind of train out of both, basically, that I say now. So and they were like, Rory's been instrumental in helping me really sort of get to another level, so okay. Yeah, leaving Niagara was kind of tough because I had a good group of people there, and I felt really connected. I just felt like I needed sort of a change, and I needed to do something that's a little better. But I'm not somebody that like takes pleasure in like trying to bail on a gym or a family. Yeah. So I felt super lucky to kind of connect with Pura when they were first opening, and then I've been there pretty much ever since. And then with Rory since probably 2017, 16.
How old were you when you started?
I am 42 now, so
probably... Don't make me do math. That's not the question I asked.
I have to get my calculator out there, so probably late 20s, I guess.
Okay, so that's a little later than usual. What got you into it?
Yeah, I was always a bit of a late bloomer in sports. Like I didn't play a lot of sports when I was a kid. I was heavy, I was overweight, and so I sort of was a bit lagging behind that way. And I think what it got me into it was I actually had a friend in high school who watched the first UFC, Hoist Gracie and all that, and we would kind of roll a little bit in the gym. This was back like, I don't know, early 90s. And then nothing really happened, and then I started to watch kind of the very first Ultimate Fighter. I remember checking that out, and I just thought it was really cool, and I just wanted to jump in and try. So that's kind of, I think, what sort of motivated me to pursue it a little bit more. Okay. And I kind of like the individual aspect of it. It's a team thing, but like I didn't have a ton of experience in team sports, so I was a little more drawn to kind of the one-on-one sort of thing, like the individuality of it a little bit. So that's probably what kind of got me into it a bit. So
yeah, that's cool. That's one thing I think most of us like. For me, that was the one thing I liked at the start too, the individuality. But then after that, it becomes the team thing because you start to become friends with everybody, and now you're part of a team.
Absolutely. I think people make the mistake of thinking it is just an individual sport, but like you're so dependent on your training partners to get better, and I think you're only really become as good as the people that you're sort of surrounding yourself with in a lot of ways. So yeah, absolutely.
So I've never really had the chance to train with PJ at all. I'm just wondering, what's his game like, and what's it like training under him?
Well, when PJ had knees that functioned, PJ's had a lot of knee surgeries, but they called him Primetime O'Sullivan, so he was really kind of flashy, like a lot of cartwheel passing, great triangle game. I mean, He's a long, lean kind of guy and would just set up triangles from everywhere. But what I like about PJ is that he's always kind of been, always wanted to continue to evolve, right? So we were sort of a Machado affiliate. That's where PJ got his black belt. But we ended up moving with the Mendez brothers as the sport was kind of changing. So it's been cool to see PJ continue to evolve as well. Like, we've started to obviously take on a lot of the characteristics of the Mendez brother with their sort of more modern passing style, a lot of De La Riva work. So I'd say like his guard game is very dangerous. His triangles are super dangerous, but he's always evolving and he always kind of wants to keep his finger kind of like on the pulse of the sport. So I think that's pretty cool. That's what I like about PJ a lot.
Being around for so long, there's been a lot of growth in the sport, and even since I started maybe 10 years ago. What's the biggest thing that comes to mind when you think about the growth of the sport over the last maybe 14 years here?
It just seems like the sport has become, there's such variety in the sport, right? Like you can almost train in almost any way you want now. Like if you want to be more Nogi, you can kind of focus on Nogi more. If you want to be strictly in the gi, you can do that. If you want to be a competitor, you can do that. There's more sort of recreational sort of gyms or programs that aren't as focused. Even the Mendez brothers, I mean, they're world class, but they have a great crew of people that aren't even competing. So it seems like there's a lot of different sort of variety of training styles. But I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is just the speed at which competitors and athletes are improving, because the access to information is just crazy. Like there's so much elite world class knowledge and technique on YouTube. It's like, I've said it's like the golden age of the DVD sort of thing, where I just remember when I started, it seemed like the game was a lot smaller, like it seemed like obviously people had different games, but the techniques weren't as varied. And now it's just because we're able to trade ideas with different gyms and online and different instructors. It just seems like the speed at which people evolve and techniques improve is lightning quick. It's hard to sort of stay on the cutting edge of what's happening, because it seems like the evolution is so much faster.
So what do you think the best way to go about training is then? Do you just try and learn some like basics and then really just focus on your own game and trying to bring something innovative to the mats?
I think so. I mean, it's tough because I think you're going to ultimately end up taking on kind of the characteristics of your gym to a certain degree, right? Because I don't think everybody can incorporate all the techniques. So it's like you end up having kind of a bit of a bias or a slant depending on what gym you train at. And so you'll pick up those kind of habits. But I do think there's a lot more room now within gyms to just sort of focus on your own game as well. Like it seems like instructors are more willing to allow people opportunity to kind of branch out, Like when I first started, I felt like kind of my original instructor was a little bit more, we kind of focused on what he wanted us to learn, which is not a knock against them, but it was I had less freedom to kind of explore my own side. But at least in my experience with my instructors, they're very passionate about teaching what they believe in, but they also give you a lot of freedom to sort of explore. So I do think, I've always thought jiu-jitsu is sort of like, it's like education in general. You go to your classes and you listen to the lectures and you learn, but in order to become the best student or grappler, you still have to have a sense of, you have to have like your own drive to sort of do extracurricular stuff, right? You can't just expect to go to a class and fully develop. You've got to go home and watch DVDs, and you've got to go home and watch matches, and bring your own imagination and kind of ideas to the mat as well. So I think it's a combination of finding a gym that you like the style of, and then also being willing to spend time on little side projects where you can develop whatever interests you, So I think that's kind of maybe the best approach, but it's tough. I mean, every gym I go to, it's like I feel like I'm missing something because they're doing this, and then I go to this gym and they're doing this, and so I think it's impossible to do it all the right way, so to speak. There's just too much, So
Yeah, like after Parabellum came to town and Taza was doing his rounds, I went to watch him at Parabellum and ended up seeing Gringo actually there to try and fix. So it's just what you're saying. There's the guy. He's a black belt. He's been a black belt forever. sees this leg lock guy come to town and it's like, okay, I got to go over there and learn from him. It'd be a waste to let that kind of slide by.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I think I've seen more as we talked about sort of the evolution is that, like, especially me when I'm trying to become more of an instructor and teach, it's like I always want to keep an open mind because, like, there's so much that I just don't know. And I think you have to acknowledge that and be okay with that because the sport is just growing so quickly. I think you need to have a humility about yourself and realize, like, who cares? I've been doing this for 14 years. There could be a kid that's been training for 5 years that's light years ahead of me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's the reality now. Like, there are young and up and coming grapplers that are going to be training for a fraction of the time that you have been, and they're going to be more technical, they're going to be more knowledgeable, and that's what's kind of beautiful about jiu-jitsu is it's not BS. It's like you are what you are, and it's like if you develop a great game in 4 years or you develop a great game in 15, like you just sort of, the maths don't lie, so to speak. And so I think it's good to learn from everybody that you can.
Yeah. I had like a real first-hand experience with that after I think I had maybe six or 7 years of training, and I got matched up against a TriStar guy at a Grappling Industries. I've never heard his name before. His name was Ethan. I told my coach, I'm like, I gotta fight this guy Ethan Krellinson, and it was the first time my coach ever went, oh, that okay. And I think I don't even know if he'd been training for a year yet, and he ended up tapping me. I think I had like maybe 4 times as much experience as him, and yeah, it's just the time that you put in, and yeah, you just always get surprised by the new up and comers that are working on something different.
Absolutely, and I think like I have that experience a lot, especially like I roll with a lot of young athletic guys at Parabellum, especially, and there's the kid that I mentioned in my top 10, Vinny Diaz, and I mean, you know, and again, he's a kid that started very young too, like he's still very young, so sometimes you think, oh, he hasn't been training that long, but they started when they were, you know, they could barely walk, you know, so, but he's a young guy, and it's just, and it's like anything in life. Some people have a capacity that's above yours. Maybe they understand it on a level you don't, or they spend more time on the mat than you. And, you know, it just is what it is. So I always try to like embrace that as opposed to sort of like going away from it.
How old do you think guys should be before they start competing? Because I've had a couple good matches with guys who are probably like 14, 15 years old when I was in my 20s. And they were some of the hardest matches I've had. I won a couple, I've lost a couple. Some of them take off and they're amazing, and some of them I never really see again. Do you think that has to do with the age? Like, do you think there is a specific age that you should start competing at, or is it more of like a maturity thing?
That's a really good question, actually. I just before I answer that, I had an experience too with Brandon Hare. He's a young guy, like he's like a world champ as a young kid.
Yeah, I competed against him.
Great. I mean, I love that kid. He's just, you know what I mean? Like a great pace and all that. It's like, so I totally understand what you're saying. As far as competing in age goes, I don't think kids should be like forced against their will to do it. I don't think parents should be like, listen, you're competing or whatever. Because I think it's an individual thing. Like some kids are going to shy away from it and others are going to flourish under it. So I don't know that I would set like an age and say this is when you should start. I mean, I see that in adults, right? Like I see tons of adults that compete and then they never want to do it again. Yeah. So I'm not sure that it's age. In fact, you might be able to make the argument the younger you start, the more you get acclimated to competition with less consequences, maybe, you know, in the sense that I think maybe adult egos take a bigger hit from losses than kids do. But I think it's going to be an individual thing. I think kids should be encouraged to try, but you never want to, if they have a bad experience, I wouldn't necessarily like force them to compete again, you know, but I do think that it's going to come down to the kid or the individual competitor ultimately to how they respond to that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I guess it's true. Like if you just think about any other sport, hockey, soccer, basketball, the kids are in competition right away. They don't just practice for the whole season, right? So yeah, I guess if you look at it that way, you might as well kind of just let the kid decide pretty much.
I think so. And honestly, I think for the kids that do it, it's probably a good sort of life lesson in a way, like to deal with adversity and failure at a young age, because I do think that sort of thing gets harder as you get older. you know?
Yeah.
Like I think if you haven't had that shock of going into a competition or ever competing and you do it as an adult, I think it can really rattle you, right? Because you may have developed this sense of yourself that isn't accurate.
What do you think the importance of competition is as far as your actual jiu-jitsu growth goes?
I always feel like it's a bit of an accelerator in the sense that, like, you can go and do your few classes per week or whatever. And I just think competition sort of puts all that in a microwave, and it speeds up the process because you're going to have a goal. So you're going to have something that's going to force you. You're going to have anxiety, which is going to have, you're going to want to train harder. You're going to pay attention more. You're going to really sharpen your skills. And I just think exposing yourself to the anxiety, it just, on the other side of that, it makes everything seem easier.
Okay, yeah,
Life's a little easier. Training is a little easier. You learn to manage anxiety better. And yeah, I just think it's a great way to supplement training because I think I see people that compete regularly and it just seems they make jumps a lot faster. Okay. And they're always, I'm sure you've had the experience of training with maybe a younger, less ranked competitor versus an older, higher ranked non-competitor. Yeah. And there's a big difference a lot of times, right? Sometimes the competitors they're fierce, they're aggressive, they're more technical, they're more driven. So I think it's a great way to kind of jumpstart your progress, and learn a lot of like life lessons along the way, I think too.
Yeah, for sure. And like, there's one thing to have holes on the mats in class and have somebody kind of take advantage of those. But when you're in a tournament and there's something that you haven't worked on and somebody catches you with that is like, you just want to jump off a bridge. Like, it's so brutal.
Because you're putting yourself in a situation where you're putting yourself out there and you're making consequences for yourself, right? You're saying like, let's say you slacked in training, you knew you could have done better, or someone beat you that you thought you were better than, but you're gassed out because you didn't train hard enough. I think that fuels people to continue to train. And let's face it, I mean, if you just show up and you never have a goal in training, it can get a bit monotonous. Like if you never you're just sort of, let's show up and what happens. I think it keeps people engaged more over the long term because they look at it as, they start to get the bug a little bit of competing, and then each belt they're working up to a goal. So I think there's a lot of benefits. I mean, so I think it's a really good thing for everybody to at least try,
And you just mentioned the anxiety that comes with it, with competition. Being a little older when you started and started competing, a little more mature than like a 16-year-old going in there. Like, what's your mindset like? How do you deal with the nerves of competing?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because like I've had mental health issues my whole life. I mean, anxiety is a massive problem for me, and part of the reason that I started to compete again more is because I wanted to challenge myself that way, and I wanted to learn how to deal with that more. So it's always a struggle for me because I'll just get, I have like more generalized anxiety, so it doesn't really matter what's going on. There's always kind of a base level of high anxiety. So I've actually, over the last 2 years, that's become something that's changed dramatically for me. And part of the reason I've had a little bit more confidence is I just believe in my training a little bit more. Like, I don't know if you've ever trained with Rory, but he's just an unbelievable coach and a mentor. And the way he runs practices are often very grueling, especially leading up to tournaments. Even PJ at Pura, like when PJ's in competition mode, we really kick things up. But I was really sort of struggling on the fly to figure out the best way to kind of deal with anxiety and mentality and all that. And, for me, what really, really changed things was like, I started to make sure that I was digesting more like positive stuff that I was watching on TV videos, because my mind tends to become very negative very easily. Like it's just where my brain wants to go. Yeah. I'm very sort of self-deprecating. I always think that I'm not good enough, fast enough, smart enough, all that kind of stuff. And so I started to listen to some more motivational stuff, more positive talk, like motivational speakers, more visualization, more breathing stuff. And I think it's like anything. I always say it's like public speaking. It's like, it's so terrifying, but the more you do it, there's a little bit of a desensitization that happens.
Yeah, for sure. The anxiety for me was crazy at the start. Like my goals went from I'm going to be a world champion to I just need to not puke on the mats when I compete. Like I got DQ'd from like 3 or 4 tournaments because I literally puked. And it was anxiety. That's all it was. And then it's just like, let's just go to as many tournaments as you can until it's gone.
But that's a great mentality. Like that takes a real sort of gutsy approach, right? Because a lot of people would say, myself included in the past, I would be like, fuck this, I'm not doing it. Sorry, I don't think it's swear, but I don't want to do this. But I think that that's a really admirable trait, that you can sort of see that and say, you know what, let's double down, let's do more of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh man, in every tournament, just being like, why am I here? Like, what is going on? But like you said, I think the preparation is the big thing, because it was always like the thought of like, oh, I didn't do the conditioning enough. I didn't eat well enough, stuff like that. And then that starts to kind of fester and build up in your head. Whereas if you just do those things, I think that's where the confidence and the belief comes from. And to go back to like the technique and styles and stuff that we were talking about, yeah, I think it comes down to more the belief in your gym, the belief in your coach, and the belief in the system that you're running that is going to give you that confidence and kind of get rid of that anxiety.
And I feel too, like in competition, it doesn't have to be this like black and white thing where if I go and I lose, it's a waste, and if I go and I win, then it was all worth it. Like a lot of times there's these little moments, these little seeds that get planted of like, oh shit, like I can actually do this, you know? Like I've had so many of those, especially leading up. Like 2019 was the best competition year of my life, and a lot of it was facing these kind of fears, and a lot of it was, you know, these little moments of success where I beat somebody that I didn't think I was capable of, or I put somebody to sleep that was really intimidated me or something like that. And it's just, sometimes you have to be willing to fail and be afraid just for that one little seed that you can build on for the next one, you know? And that was really the story for me. Things just really snowballed. And it takes sort of that willingness to look silly in front of people to try to do that. And I think anybody that competes, whether I see you on the mat and you're throwing up or whatever, I still admire those. No, I mean, like, and I mean that, I still admire those people, because when you've done it, you understand that it's not easy, right? Like, I don't care what level you're competing at, to get out there in front of your friends. And, you know, if you're a teacher, like I've had students watch me and it's like I failed, and, you know, you're embarrassed, and it's just like, but at the end of the day, like the people that get in there and do it, they all understand that this is really difficult, and it's easy to just sort of hide and say, I don't do that anymore, you know? And so I just admire people that get out there, and I think a lot of people should, because it's like public speaking on steroids, you know? It's awful.
Well, the funny thing too is it's because it's not much of a spectator sport, is you are in front of your family, your friends, your students, your teammates. And there's not just random people in the crowd that you can just be like, oh, whatever, I don't care about their opinion.
Exactly. It'd be awesome if it was. Honestly, I feel like sometimes I do better when it's, even if there's a lot of people, I don't know them. Like at the Worlds, I had a ton of anxiety, but even though I knew people were watching on Flow Grappling, I didn't feel it as much because they weren't sitting there watching. If they were staring at the gate watching me, I'd be like, oh my God, you know? So but I think you come out stronger on the other side of it. So I think I don't know. I've always respected people that win or lose, just get out there and do the damn thing, you know? Are you a purple belt?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see you compete sometime. That'd be cool, man. Yeah. You'll be on my top 10 list next year.
I'll try to make it. It'll be tough to do a gi one. I was thinking, like, I was surprised that you got 10 no-gi, because I was like, around here, there's not enough competition to be like specifically no-gi or to be specifically gi. So it's tough to find people that are just on the no-gi side. Well,
and like, just like I said, I tried to do that top 10 list, and I wasn't looking to exclude like anybody from Montreal or anything. No. It wasn't that. I felt like I had a good bubble of people that I competed with, and I wanted to use the list as an opportunity to like shout out people that, you know, weren't necessarily like the heavy hitters that you might see. Like, I mean, guys like Scott Jutras are, but I mean, you know, like I said to you earlier, like I love the Sims brothers. They're amazing. I love the TriStar guys. They're unbelievable. I just wanted to focus a little more on people that I have a little bit more direct contact with. You know, I've never really seen the Sims brothers compete, or a lot of the Montreal guys. I got super sick at the last Parabellum Quintet, I was supposed to compete, and I think to this day I think I got corona because it was the worst flu I've ever had in my life.
Really?
But oh, dude, it was the worst. It was so depressing. I missed the whole thing. I missed the event. I missed all the seminars at Parabellum. I was just on my deathbed for like 2 weeks. So
Man, you missed out.
yeah, I know. So I was super disappointed. But yeah, I mean, coming up with 10 was, I guess because the thing is too is I focus more on Nogi, so I'm at Parabellum a lot, and so I see a lot of guys come and go. And obviously with Rory putting on the quintet cards, I've gotten to see so many cool Nogi matches. But there's so many guys that I actually made a top 10 list for the gi as well. And it's like a lot of those people, it's like I could put on both, you know, like they're versatile. It's not like 100% gi specific, you know.
And that was the same thing with Amr on my list. Like, he's incredible in the gi as well. But it was the Nogi Worlds thing where I was like, I don't know if that's the first time that's ever happened that it's been an all Canadian finals, but both those guys are monsters.
Yeah, he's a beast. I mean, so many guys at Jocelyn's are just animals, and like, so that was pretty wild. I mean, even seeing like there's a kid that I have on my other list for the top 10 gi that, you know, again is a Nogi guy, but Brandon Manarin got bronze. Yeah. He's a true guy, a young guy, and there's a lot of like great talent in the area that's like world class. You know what I mean? Like David Mosley's a world champion. Nogi at blue belt, silver at brown. So we've got a lot of crazy athletes here, you know? Yeah,
one of the guys that I can't believe I missed is a guy who competed against a bunch. His name's Dennis Beenan. He's a Euro Nogi brown belt champ, Pans Nogi at brown belt silver once. Yep. And at purple, I think he won at gold, and then he's gotten 2 bronzes at Worlds. So like, we have some good guys out there.
Yeah, it's literally impossible to do a top 10 list without offending somebody.
Open mat etiquette. When you're visiting versus when you're hosting, like, I never know how to go in. Sometimes I almost say like, okay, I'm not gonna try and tap anybody. I'll protect myself. I'll play the game. We'll flow this and that. But then you'll run into a guy who's there to kill you. And then it's like, okay, how do I deal with that? Because I don't want to, I'm visiting, say, I don't want to look like I'm trying to prove myself or, you know, gym raid or whatever. And then the same thing on the other side where it's like, you don't want to seem like you're smashing the new guy, but you also don't want to get beat up by a guy coming in. What are your thoughts on etiquette?
I think that, I always try to be, I try to just, even the way I approach, like I'll usually message a gym first kind of thing. And I'll usually just be like, hey, I'm not looking to prove anything. Like, I'm just looking to meet some people. So even from the get-go, I'll try to be very kind of like, you know, diplomatic and that's not my personality anyway. I'm never a guy that is going to just go out and try to do that anyway. I think it's a good rule of thumb to try to be, you know, I wouldn't say you can't tap people, but, you know, like we all know that there's a way to sort of be a little more flowy in your jiu-jitsu. But I do think a lot of gyms end up having like an instructor that's going to send their guys at you to some degree, no matter how friendly you are, because I think they're trying to like maybe like test you or, you know, show whatever their gym is. I've had a lot of good experiences though, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of it comes down to your personality and how you approach it. I think some people give off a bad vibe, so that's why like at the very start I'm always just very much like, or I'll try to go to a gym that you know, if I'm traveling, that maybe PJ knows or somebody like that, instead of just showing up. But I mean, it sounds like you've trained at a lot of different places, so I think there's only a certain amount of it you can control, like how others are going to treat you. You know, I think there's probably always going to be a person or two that might try to rip your head off, because I think whenever you're new to a gym, people look at you as like they're going to test themselves against you, or they're going to try to, you know. But I do think just having a good attitude of being there to learn and not try to smash people is a really good good way to do it.
Do you think we're kind of getting away from that? Because I know it's pretty friendly when I go to other gyms. Like, no one is really. There's some guys, and it's mostly like the more competitive guys that go hard, but it's kind of what you expect. And a lot of them, it's like the guys that I know a little better at some point. Like it's weird. The more comfortable you get with somebody, the kind of harder you can go against each other.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm always kind of cautious of that when I go to a gym, to just not be to come off as like I'm very like friendly and trying to like say hi to people. Like a lot of that I think can get diffused in just the way you approach other people. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like sometimes if you're not smiling and you seem very like, people might get their guard up a little bit. But if you're just like, hey, how you doing? I'm Paul. I'm from here. I'm just here to learn. You know, like I think a lot of that goes a long way to diffusing kind of the tension that might be there. You know what I mean? But I think there's always one person that wants to try to rip your head off.
A great open mat that I go to is Paulo Costa's at Body of Four, Yorkdale MMA. It was every Sunday morning he would be running it. It was basically every gym was welcome, and he would really, make a point of standing in. Like if he saw things getting a little too heated, he would stand in the middle of the gym, remind everybody, "It's a Sunday morning. We're just here to roll. We're here to train hard, but there's no medals here," stuff like that, So I really respected that. I love going to his open mats.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like hosting, like you said, I think that's a great sort of mentality. Like I'm all about, like even Rory, the way he preaches, like he wants people to train hard, but there is a line, right? Like you know what I'm saying? You're not out there to try to smash each other necessarily. So I do think that's a good rule of thumb, is to like, if you see things kind of get heated and, but some gyms aren't like that, right? Like some gyms are just more fight clubs. So I do think the culture tends to trickle down from the instructor, right? So you can probably get a feel for what the gym would be like based on kind of the personality of the head instructor sort of thing. But even when I teach classes, I like people to train hard, but I think it's just my personality. I like to joke and have fun, and I feel like that sets a tone in the room without really even realizing it, So I think being vocal that way is really good, and just talking to people. If you see something that's getting out of hand, I think that's great to step in. Just be like, guys, relax a little bit, kind of thing. Unless it's a competition room, right? When that's kind of what you expect. But at open mats, I think it's important to kind of keep people on the page of like building sort of relationships and trying to learn and get better from each other, So
Yeah, and do you think it's important just to get out to open mats every now and then, rather than just stay in your own club all the time?
I think so. I think, because I do think you can get really stagnant, because, a lot of training partners you end up in the same positions, the same scenarios. Like it's one of my training partners, Tom, and I, we always end up, it always goes like one of like two or three ways, you know what I mean? And so even he'll be like, I don't even know, he'll say like, he has some setups that I know that don't work as well on me now because I know he's doing them. So it's like, you can almost psych yourself out if you're training against the same people.
Yeah.
Like there's times where I'm like, oh, if I do this on Tom, he's going to triangle me. But if I do this to like 9 out of 10 other people, it works just fine. So you can kind of almost convince yourself that stuff that's working doesn't work anymore. So I think it's always good to get a new perspective on people that don't know your game as well, and to just get out and roll with different bodies, because everybody's just got a little different spin on what you're doing and how to defend it and guard it. So yeah, and I think competing is a great way to do that as well too, right? So some people can't get out to open mats a lot, but yeah, definitely important, I think, to do that.
You can get some real eye openers too. One of the guys on your list, Judo Greg Young.
Oh yeah, Judo Greg.
I had never seen him before. I didn't see him compete at the Parabellums, and I got a chance to roll with him the last time I was training at Parabellum. And it's no geese, there's no belts, there's nothing going on there. I feel kind of good about my leg lock game. I like to pat myself on the back sometimes. He smashed me. I didn't get anywhere near his legs. He just stopped everything. I think he leg locked me a couple times. I was just like, and it's funny. It's like every time, you start pumping your own tires a bit, there's somebody there to deflate them, man.
Judo's ridiculous. Like he's a bit of a dark horse. Like he hasn't competed as much in the last few years, but he's just a beast. And yeah, he actually got me. Like I've gone really deep into the leg lock route, even though I've competed more without them. It's still kind of probably one of my stronger points in my game. And he started got me into it, and then we've been sort of like pushing each other back and forth, getting better at it all the time. But yeah, don't feel bad about that. Greg smashes a lot of most people.
I'd never seen him before, and after we were done, I'm like, you train gi? And he's like, yeah, I train gi a little bit. And then you're like, he's a judo black belt. He didn't mention that. So I'm like, this guy's probably a monster in the gi.
He's a brown belt and has been for a while. I've always felt like he's got a black belt skill set, but he just hasn't competed as much. And but he just, yeah, gi or no gi, it doesn't matter. He's a very versatile guy. Like, you can throw him in any scenario and he'll do well. Stand up, ground, top pressure, back, leg locks, whatever. So yeah, he's
knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. He was giving me a lot of good pointers. So
oh, nice, yeah. When was the last time you were at Parabellum?
Oh, it was like just before the pandemic. I went there. I guess it was over February and March. I was just going Wednesday nights.
Oh, nice. I must have seen you maybe once or twice. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I'm pretty quiet. I'll just like hide in the corner a little bit and just train.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, pretty much. You know what I like about that place is that they bring in those high-level wrestlers.
Yeah.
That's huge. As far as, well, obviously for the stand-up, like, clearly, but the mindset, like just being at more wrestling tournaments and seeing how those guys and girls look at the competition, the way the coaches interact with them, it's very hard-nosed, straight to the point. No one's softening anything up for them, and I would just respect the character of a lot of those guys like crazy.
Oh, for sure. I think that mentality is what's really helped me, because I always used to just like pull guard in every tournament, basically. Like, I'd always be like, I'd kind of try the stand up, and I was like, oh man, this guy feels strong. Now for the last couple of years, I haven't pulled guard. I'm going to stay on my feet, and if he pulls, that's fine, or I'm going to get a takedown, just from that mentality of like, I think it's something that goes really well with jiu-jitsu, like that sort of wrestling sort of spirit, and I think that's an influence we're going to see more and more of in the future, especially in Nogi, as wrestlers start to cross-train more. But yeah, absolutely. It's they're crazy. Like, wrestling is probably the hardest sport in the world. Like, it's nuts. And I didn't appreciate it until I started to train with them more and watch more, but it's pretty intense.
Yeah, hey, since I've been like a little bit more confident in my, we'll say jiu-jitsu wrestling. I don't want to say wrestling. It just makes you feel more like manly, just standing up rather than pulling guard.
Increases dramatically if you wrestle.
Yeah, for sure. Last question I want to ask you though is just why do you grapple?
Just because it's hard, and it's just, first of all, I'm just passionate about it, but I've always sort of been a bit of a glutton for punishment, and I just like that it's, obviously, wrestling is harder, but it gives me a goal. It keeps me focused. I'm a guy that tends to be OCD, and I get tunnel vision on things, and that can go in bad directions, and I think something like jiu-jitsu keeps me focused. It keeps me healthier mentally, keeps me engaged in a good community of people. It keeps me physically healthy, and it's just a never-ending puzzle, right? Like, it just when you're getting better at this, now, you know what I mean? Like, so it's mentally engaging, physically engaging, and it just keeps my OCD tunnel vision focused in a good direction, I think. So it's been healthy for me in pretty much every way possible,
All right, well said. Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate the time. PFed Music on Instagram, PFed Bjj on YouTube. Anything else you want to shout out or what?
No, just I miss all the people at Pura. I miss all the people at Parabellum. Really cool to meet you. Super grateful for you giving me that question. Give me something to do during the lockdown, and really nice to meet you, man. So I'm pumped to have connected with you, and just thanks to everybody that's subscribed to the channel and supported it. I've had a good response, and I wasn't really expecting any of that. So yeah, thanks so much. I'm just grateful.